what I want to show you today is these four specialty watercolors, which I believe will really expand your creativity. These are really, really fun. I have on my site a guide for Bible journaling supplies, and under the watercolor section, there's tucked in there an area specific to specialty watercolors. And I've never really kind of walked you through what that looks like here. So I wanted to take a moment to help you see what is possible. And I'm going to do it just here in my journal. I'm using a Dina Wakley journal that has lots of different pages and some cotton watercolor paper here. And what I'm going to do is just show you through a few of these really fun things. So there's four that I'm going to show you, and I always keep my guide up to date. So if you have ideas about certain types of products that you want to use, or even if you come up with something new that you think maybe I haven't even seen, then just tell me, because I always make sure that that guide is up to date. So what we're going to do is, first of all, look at some of the obvious choices and then move towards the less obvious. And the very obvious is that when we move outside of, your basic watercolor, is to go with pearlescent and shimmery watercolor. So watercolor, I'm not going to count anything as a specialty watercolor if it's in a pan, a tube, a cake, anything like that. That's just normal watercolor. And that comes in a variety of shapes. In fact, even the watercolor crayons that I love so dearly are not going to be specialists because they're just watercolor. I want stuff that behaves differently or comes in a really unusual way. And so that's what I've got here. So first of all, the watercolor that you see in a pan, typically, this is Paul Reubens, this design, and I've just barely gotten this, so I've been cleaning what I'm working with, but you can see that you've got space on both sides for stuff here. And when you look at these colors under light, you can tell that they have this sort of shimmery quality to them. Now, I have tried a lot of shimmery watercolors over the years, and I gotta say that there's only three brands that I actually really like, and this Paul Reubens is a real winner. I really, really love these. These are so fun, and they're going to last a really long time. Every single swipe of the brush, you're getting some really good quality color, and I'll show you. Here is my swatches. So what I've done is I've taken a piece of paper and then I've taped a black piece of paper on there so that I can actually see, because you can't really tell much is going on here, but on a different color you can really tell. Some of these really, really come alive on dark paper, and so this is interesting to know if you're doing some sort of creativity and you want to put this on top of a darker color to really let it pop. So that's something to keep in mind. These colors are just gorgeous. This crepe myrtle is really interesting. It even has like a bluish quality. See, that's a really interesting thing about these, is that some of them, they change when you put them under the light, and that is quite fun. So I really like these. I think these are really fun. They are really, really beautiful, but they also, I think what's really important to notice here is that there's literally so much color, so much pigment, and so much shimmer. It doesn't really pick up these. It's like mica powder. It's very, very small amounts of shimmer, like little tiny bits of it. And what often happens with the cheaper quality watercolors is they try and do this. They end up with these really big pieces floating around, and it's almost like glitter, and you can kind of just dust it off with your fingers. This is really embedding in, and they're using carriers in here that is going to hold it to your paper when you're finished. So it's really, really special, I think. In terms of shimmery watercolor, this is probably my biggest vote, is the Paul Reubens, and they actually have bigger sets than this. I chose this 24 set because it's got a really good range of colors, but you could go for a 12, which would be, you know, less. I think anything more than 24 colors for shimmer is just really silly because you don't really need to use this as its own color. I think this works really well on top of a normal watercolor to add a layer of shimmer. And while there is pigment here, you could just do this straight up on its own. It's a really good layering option to put this on as your top layer on top of another one. So this gives you a range of colors. So you might put this on a green and this on top of the blues and the yellows and so forth. And that works really, really well. In that regard, 24 colors is all you really need. But if you really are involved in watercolor all day, every day, and you love shimmer, they do have, I think, up to 48 colors. It's like twice as many as this. It's, but these are a real investment. And I felt like 24 was more than splashing out and quite adequate. I saved up for these and purchased them as a gift for myself, and I have really enjoyed them. And I don't really use my mixing wells as much with these, but they're really fun. So another one that I really like is the Finetech Pearlescent colors. The Finetech actually has, as you can see, some really nice golds and silvers. And these are really, really lovely the way that they're built in, and they've got space for, say, a watercolor brush or something like that to live here. But I find these are really nice when you want some really strong golds, because I don't really see Paul Reubens being particularly good with golds. I think they have a few, by all means, they definitely have a few, but they just don't really compare to what we have in a dedicated gold set from Finetech. So when I'm looking for that really beautiful splash of color for, you know, Christmas or anything special occasion, then I tend to go for these sorts of things. And, you know, obviously I'm looking at watercolor here. This can't be just for Bible journaling or just for watercolor. This can be mixed media, all kinds of uses, crafting. And, you know, I think these are really fun. There's one other company that does a decent job. These are high quality watercolors, the Paul Reubens and Finetech pearlescent watercolors. And so do look over on my guide. Just go to RebeccaRJones.com, look for Bible journaling, and find my supplies guide, and it's under watercolor. There's that specialty watercolor section, and I'll link all of my favorite stuff there. But there's one other type of one which is to consider, and that is these Gansai Tambi. So Gansai Tambi have several sets, and they do have a set that is like 36 sort of colors here, and typically they have like a few under here. What I did with these are Japanese watercolor. They're really beautiful. I actually bought the bigger set, and what I've got here is, this is the bigger set that actually is here, but between the two sets and the additional sets that I bought, I actually have used this tray for all the extras. And so my smaller set is all the kind of normal watercolors, whereas this is getting into specialty and extras. So I've got some extras here, but you can see there is 4 sets here. This is like an opal set, and they've got a starry set here. This is I think a pearlescent set, and this is their gem set. So they've got 4 different sets here. Really, really lovely, and they come out real nice. You can see here there's a bit of shimmer that comes through them, and they tend to be, you know, good quality Japanese. They're a little bit more opaque, which means they're not transparent, but you've got to keep in mind that as you thin them down, then they will be transparent. So how do these work? Let's give them a quick test, and then I will pop on to the next, because remember, we've got 4 things to look at here. So pearlescent is just one of them. So I'm gonna grab this and just dive straight in with this I like this blue right here. So what I often find is the case with anything in watercolor, you tend to do really well to spray something with water and then let it constitute for a bit. So what that means is we would just open these up and just grab a brush here, or sorry, grab a bottle of water, and I've just filled this up. So there, I'm gonna get it a little bit wet and then it will be ready to go in a sec. So here, this is ready to go now. So I'm gonna show you what this does. This is really pretty, but you can keep on adding thickness and it's just gonna keep on getting thicker and thicker with you as you go. So you can get this almost to like a gouache consistency, which is not transparent at all, or you can get it really a lot less. So let's keep in mind that I've got one bucket here, so it could spread a little bit of the color around. Now I'm going to grab some here from this, which is beautiful blue from the Paul Reubens. And this has a smoother consistency the way it goes on. I think it behaves more smoothly, but it also feels like it's missing a bit of water to make it run a little bit. Now this paper here is actually cotton based, so it's going to hold stuff rather than let it slide around. So that's something to consider, and it will behave a little bit differently on your Bible paper as it will on a notebook or a journal or any other paper. You've got to keep in mind that these things, they change depending on what you're using. So here I've got this beautiful Arabic gold, and I love that you've got this kind of wavy texture on there. Despite it just looking beautiful, it's not actually designed for that. I think it's so that when you run your brush across, your brush has to collect stuff that as it runs across the surface. So it helps it to make that happen for you. Now you can see that's a really strong gold going on there, and I'm getting a nice thick consistency there, which is probably rivaling these other two, but I would say that this is smooth, but you can tell it's kind of sticking in one place. This kind of moves around a little bit, and this acts a lot like a gilding gold that you would use for crafting and fine art projects. So those are really interesting. Now let's look at something else. So we are going to move on to another really fun specialty watercolor, which is a bit unusual. This is basically watercolor, but this is something I haven't shown for a long time. You can get this at, I think, peerless.com. You can get this online around. You just need to find somebody who's selling it. I think Amazon has a few places, so I may or may not link to this, but I made myself a book of these, and I made my own little booklet for it because I wanted to get these all in one place. So this is Peerless, and you can see I've got all the colors basically that they've ever come out with, and I've put in between each of these pages a acetate plastic so that it protects from the next layer. So then I've got pieces of paper here, and then I've got another one here. So I don't want these colors to cross-contaminate. But the nice thing is then I've got a piece of plastic right here ready for me to use as a palette as well. So then we've got all these reds, and then moving on to kind of like the pinks and purples and blues. It's just beautiful, and some grays down here. So let's go for this. Can you see this really amazing design? I did not do that. That's how it came. I did rub some of the color out here, but the darkness, that's the cobalt blue there. And you can see that I've taken my brush to these little sections, but that is all just pure color. And what they've done is they've just taken little sheets and they've embedded watercolor at massive amounts of concentrate right into that space. So it's just right on this little sheet, and so you get these little blocks right here, and it'll tell you on the back what they are, and it'll rub right onto your fingers if you rub your hand across it. So I'll try not to do that. Here, butterfly wing blue. Look at the granulation and star-like textures that are going in there, and the sky blue. It is really, really fun. And if we look at this here, here's another one. Heliotrope does that. Some of these just behave differently, and you can see that right on the paper. So these are really, really fun, I think, to work with, but they are just a really nice flat surface. What I've seen some people do is, rather than making a bigger booklet like this, so you can see how big this is, rather than making it this big, what they actually do is make these Peerless watercolor booklets, and they just cut these in half and make their book, or just with a quarter, because the strips are really packed with pigment, so you don't need much in order to make this work. And the reason that these were originally designed was actually for tinting photographs. In, you know, original black and white photographs, that's where this concept originally came from. And so these would be used for that sort of purpose, but it now is just a really fun, easy way to travel. So I can actually take this booklet here and drop it in, you know, by all of my other supplies really easily. But I could easily have made this into even smaller by just doing like a quarter of the block, or doing it in thirds or something like that. So let me show you what this looks like. This is just watercolor. That's actually what it is. So I'm barely touching my brush. You saw I didn't do anything there. I just got it wet, and you can see the wetness right there. This is just packed with color. It's so vibrant. I absolutely love it. And it's one of those things that I forget about every now and then. And then I come back to it and I think, why did I give up on that? That was so fun. Here's my second swipe. So I'm literally, my brush is just, let me get it so it's almost dry. Now I'm going to say I'll try some of this larkspur blue. It looks almost brown on there, but when you go on to here, look, see, now that's a bit dry. So I'm going to grab my brush and add some color, but because this is cotton, it's sticking to what I'm doing here a little bit more. But you can see these are so highly pigmented and just really beautiful. So this is a really fun way, I think, to create your own little travel thing. And you can look up how to bind your own books. You can look up how to make a Peerless book. And there's, I think even Jane Davenport did one years ago. Several people made these, and I shared a bit about how to do them as well. So they're a lot of fun, and that is Peerless. So we've got shimmery watercolor, pearlescent, that sort of thing. We've got Peerless watercolor as our second. Now we've got two more. So this one's a little bit more obvious, but interesting nonetheless, and this is concentrated watercolor. So for this, I'm going to grab myself a plate to put this on, and what we have here is literally, it's already constituted. So listen to that. That is a little ball in there that is going to help me mix everything up. And because you can see it sort of sticks here when you lay it like that. So you use the balls in there to help move everything around. And this one's gotten stuck in the sludge somewhere in there, so you keep doing it for a bit and it's fine, but I haven't opened this one for a little bit. So what we'll do is we'll unscrew it and then squeeze, go in, let go. Now we've got some color inside there, right? So I'm going to put some right here. There's just one drop. That's it. This thing is so packed with concentrate, I don't need a lot here. Now I need a wet brush. And what I'm going to do is look at it and just end up with loads of a beautiful color to work with really easily. Look how highly concentrated that is. Now, the benefit of this particular type of paper is that it likes to hold stuff. So don't worry about this not moving around. It's the paper that I've chosen for today. But the concept is the what we're going for here. We want to see what is the color, the level of color that we have access to here, and what is it doing. So it's coming in really, really pigmented without hardly any effort. And that is something that is really worth paying attention to, because what we want is something that is economical and easy to work with, but is going to be really vibrant. And so this one, it's kind of sludgy at the moment, but we'll give it a try. There we go. So you do need to give these a little bit of a shake now and then, but I've literally had them for years and they do actually last a very long time. So here we go. Look at that. Is that not just stunning? So vibrant. I absolutely love these. And this is called Dr. P.H. Martin's Concentrated Watercolor. These ones are radiant, which means that they're not considered light fast for a really long time. But he also has the, I believe it's called hydrant or something of that nature. I'll put it, hydrous, that's what it is. So the radiant ones are not, you can see it's very beautiful, but it's not as light fast. So it's not gonna last 100 years like a typical watercolor might. But the hydrous ones are the light fast ones and are great quality. So these come in a huge range of colors and they're a lot of fun. So that's something to consider. And I'd love to hear from you about which of these you've tried or are interested in trying. You definitely talk to me. All right, so this next one, our last one, is a real fun one. This is actually Brusho. I've talked about this. It's been some time, but it is so much fun. This is actually watercolor in crystal format. So to do this, I'm going to switch this around actually so that we have some free space here. And what we're going to look at is I have 24 colors. You can get these are actually in the UK and they're non-toxic, just watercolor, but it's the color is actually in powder format. So this is typical watercolor in powder format, which means that it's a specialty watercolor. So what I learned is to put it in the box and then actually get a needle and poke like 3 or 4 holes in the lid of each of these. So I will show you here. You can see that the powder is sort of popping out of some of these, and that is just what I'm after. So we've got some colors here and so much fun. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab a couple colors, and you can see I saved this for last because my hands are going to get real dirty real quick. So here's what we're going to do. I have a water bottle by Tim Holtz Distress Sprayer. You can use what you want, but there's 2 settings on this side and on that side. And the difference here is that one is going to just spray consistently, and the other one is going to basically put bursts of color around. Now, my hands already have a little bit, so this is kind of messing with my demo here a little bit, but let's do this. All right, so right here, now that I've got a wet surface, in fact, I'm going to get this one a little bit wetter because that cotton. All right, now I'm going to take this. This is violet, and I'm going to use it like a salt and pepper shaker. I'm just going to go on like this, and I'm going to do it here as well. Now, you definitely want to make sure and not breathe that in. Now I'm going to get close. All right, now here's where it gets fun. We're gonna pick another color. I don't want to make mud, so I'm gonna pick something that feels close to purple. That's just gonna add some interest. All right, so sea green is a little, yeah, let's go for turquoise, why not? Now, you can see that some of this actually has other colors in it. So we're creating some pooling effects with this one. And then with this one, we're just trying to get it really wet in certain places. All right, now I'm going in with my turquoise. You can see that this actually adds a really interesting dimension to the surface of your paper. Now, I'm going to take my brush while this is sitting there, because I have particles sitting everywhere. And now I want my own design. So I'm going to say, like, I'm just going to start adding. And I need to keep in mind that this paper is going to hold on to stuff. Now, I've got some thoughts for you regarding that in a sec here. So can you see what we've got going on here? There's just this really fun kind of marbly feel that you cannot get any other way. And you can add like a confetti to it by adding a little bit of orange here, a little bit of this there. Now, while this is all wet around the outside, I'm just going to grab some orange, which will add some contrast, and just drop this in. Now, if you've seen me do this before, you'll see that if your surface is covered with some gesso or something like that, you're going to find that it's not going to soak in. It's actually going to go wild on the paper. Now see here, this yellow is being picked up inside the green because these colors are made up by mixing pigments together. And then here we've got this same thing. I'm just going to get this real wet right in the center and then go for it. And you can see it's holding the color where it wants to hold it. And so there's this like sort of fireworks confetti sort of feel, and obviously I'm making a mess out of this because I'm just demonstrating, but I want you to see what's possible. So let's just try one last bit here on this paper, which is just a tag, a manila folder, and let's see what we can get here. So this is going to basically stay on the surface. I'm going to grab some of this. And you can open this, but I'll tell you what, man, the moment you open this, it is going everywhere. And I don't want to do it. I think it just is too much. So I would recommend not. Can you see how that's pushing around? It's forcing the colors to move. So much fun. So now we can go in and add our own feel to things as well. Or you can just let it dry without adding anything. See, this is what happens when you start to add a color that can create mud. So be mindful of that as you get going. See, that's why we don't add colors that are across the color wheel from each other, right next to each other. Like, we put them next to each other, we don't mix them, and then you don't end up with this. So that's really fun though. You can basically get these blooms of color that you can't get any other way. So the design with these is just really special. Again, this is the Brusho, and they're watercolor crystals. So it's all just powder form. So we've looked at the powder form of watercolor. We've looked at the really beautiful pigmented, highly concentrated liquid watercolor. We've looked at these Peerless watercolor sheets, which are really, really fun for travel and that sort of purpose. And we've also looked at a variety of pearlescent watercolors. And I think that these are some really fun options that add an incredible amount of creative options so that you can take your creativity to the next level. So I would highly recommend that you give these a try. Definitely have some fun, create with these. Let me know what it is that you see yourself trying out or that you have tried, and if you have any questions about what it is that you would do or that you need answered in order to use these, I'm very happy to help. I hope this expands your creative ideas, but remember, the goal isn't to get paralysis by thinking that you need all the things and all the stuff. I invested in these over time, and you can have a lot of fun with just one or two colors from something to give it a try without going all out and buying a huge set of something. Try one or two colors of something. Most of these all come in the ability to buy a small set, so give them a try if something really piques your interest, and get out of that rut. If you're feeling a bit stuck with something creatively and you want to try new things, then try new things and then have fun with it and share definitely what you're up to. I'd love to hear. It's always fun to connect with you, and I hope you have a really good day. Take care of yourself. Bye now.